Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I am the Fuzz, and I'm here to entertain. Let's talk elves. Why do I want to talk elves, you ask? Well, it's because these poor guys have been getting a lot of hate from some of the newer players and even older players. In fact, there is a post on the forums titled Elfweaver is not fun. Okay, Elfweaver being a pun on elves and Spellweaver, obviously. And the complaints are always the same. It's an aggressive deck. It's a smorc deck. It can kill you in like 5 turns. And it's really not fun to play against. Point taken. I will not dispute that. But what I'm here to say is, it's not their fault. Don't hate elves for what they do. They do what they have to do. Yeah, you may not like that they go face, but really, what do you expect them to do? So what I have here is the list of all the elves in the game. And actually a little bit more, because when you put it in the search bar, it'll search for anything with elf. So we've got, for instance, like Grand Reunion. This is not an elf, obviously, right? Well, we could just cycle creatures, but this just removes that. And also the Primordial Trant is not an elf, but basically everything else is an elf. If you look at all these guys, there's one thing you'll notice about them. They're not very big in terms of stats. In fact, if you want to count the number of elves who have more than 2 health, let's see. Nienna, that's 1. Haldiri. Commander, that's 3. 3. Let's see if you can keep going. Warrior, that's 4. And Drela, that's 5. 5 of them have more than 2 health. Now, of those, how many are actually any good? No, this isn't the fighter. This doesn't fight, so that doesn't count. I'll give you Haldiri. I'll give you Commander. So you got 2 slightly bigger elves. And this card sucks. Nobody runs it. And Drela. Almost all the elves are small creatures. Small and fast creatures. You know what small and fast stands for? It stands for smorc time. And just aggressiveness, because they don't have a choice. This is a fact of the nature aspect in general, not just elves, but nature in general. They just don't have any late game. They don't have big creatures. If you want to look at nature in general, what is the biggest creature nature has? Where is it? It's that Sun Chaser thing, right? No, let's erase that. It's the Sun Chaser. That's a 4/4, but that's not that threatening, really, and the effect isn't all that game-changing or anything. It's not Karthus. Okay, what else? Trant, that's a 3/4 with 1 speed. Admittedly, it has a good effect, but it's not exactly game-breaking. And then, okay, Haldiri is just a 3/3. Yes, it's swift, but it's just a 3/3. It only does 3 damage. So, as an elf player, as a nature player, it's hard to envision a control deck, really, because you don't have late-game creatures, or spells, or anything. As a result, whenever there is a nature control deck, it usually revolves around using using elves for early game, and then using something like the Bouncing Shrine, if I can find it. This thing that lets you bounce things back and forth to use with things like Karthus for free destruction, with Unicorn for spell removal, with Succubus, whatever. It's a framework. It's not the actual meat of the control. It usually works with another aspect that's good at control, like Dominion. It can't do it by itself. As a result, you don't have much of a choice but play aggressively. Yes, I don't like that. I don't like aggressive decks. They're not very fun. But at the same time, I can't really fault a player for doing this if they want to play nature. Because making a nature control deck is hard. And if it is a control deck, it's not going to be nature. It's going to be something with a side of nature, usually instead of wisdom. Because nature does offer some tools for control, mostly more efficient spell removal, and the reusability of battle cries with the shrine. But, I mean, it doesn't have card draw, like blue. So, it doesn't have ramp, really, so usually it's just a little bit worse. So that's just the story of nature. They have great early game, well, pretty good early game. They've got combat buffs, but again, all those things just favor smorc. And because so much of the existing control late game is like heavy removal with Helms, with Karthus, with Cataclysm, you can't really hope to establish a board of like decent creatures and, you know, use that as your late game win condition. It'll get cleared. If it doesn't get cleared, you'll have already won. So basically what I'm trying to say is, don't blame the poor elves. It's not their fault. They don't know any better. They don't have any better options. There aren't any really big elves. So when the new cards do come out, I hope they get something, some kind of late game that they can use just as a big threat to put on the board. But the sad fact of the matter is that even if they did have a big creature, imagine this, imaginary creature. It's a 7/7, epic, awesome treant of amazingness, right? Costs, I don't know, 4 mana, 4 aspect, 7/7 with unstoppable or something, right? Whatever. It wouldn't make a lick of difference, because when you play this creature, it's gonna get removed. Because Karthus exists, because Helm exists. Well, I mean, Helm is not that big of a deal, but mostly Karthus. So, the way nature wins is by strong aggro, because all your stuff is fast, you can usually control the board, and then mid-range follow-up with Haldiri or Swifted Trees or Jungle Death Traps or whatever. If the game goes any longer than that, you'll have probably lost. So, yeah. You do what you gotta do, because you just don't have any better options. The aspects in Spellweaver are not designed in such a way that every single one of them has access to, like, all the tools, like removal, healing, draw, and all that. Unfortunately not. Aspects are not classes. They are not supposed to be self-contained. So you're supposed to choose 2 aspects, but sadly, often when you choose 2 aspects, even in that case, you don't have everything. There's always going to be something missing in most cases. So that's the story of elves. Don't hate on them. When they do smorc you down, when they do beat you with Haldiris, with constant landslides or whatever, they do what they gotta do to survive, right? And they lose just as often when their board gets cleared, because they have no hope in a late game, because the most damage they can do is like 3 with Haldiri, unless they're saving up a huge haste combo with basic Neva. That's about the only late game they have, but that's not really so much a late game, since they don't have access to card draw. They would have to recruit Wisdom for that purpose, but why do that when you can just play Smorc, and in that case you don't have to worry about Path or Karthus or anything, because if you haven't won by turn, 8 or 9, then you're just gonna lose, right? Anyways, that's enough for my 2 cents on the poor fate of these elves. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and have yourselves the best day possible.